Black lawyer asked to move for a VIP passenger. Minutes later, he grounds the entire flight. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Sir, you need to move. This seat is reserved for a VIP passenger, not for passengers like you. The words snapped across row 3 like a belt of cold lightning. Heads lifted, conversations froze mid-sentence. A flight attendant with a polished smile, the practiced kind, corporate-trained and brittle, stood over a man who hadn't even finished fastening his seatbelt. Elias Monroe looked up slowly. 38, perfectly pressed navy suit. Slim leather briefcase tucked beneath the seat. Calm eyes that had learned patience the hard way through courtrooms, boardrooms, and years of being underestimated. But none of that mattered now. Not to her. Not to the rows of passengers already watching as if someone had pressed play on the night's in-flight entertainment. Sir, she repeated, voice dropping to that honeyed tone used to discipline children, I'm going to need you to stand. Our special guest needs this seat for takeoff. A couple in row 2 exchanged a smirk, the kind that said, of course, figures. Someone farther back muttered, he probably booked basic economy and snuck up here. Elias didn't move. He had boarded first, checked in early, paid full fare, sat down quietly, disturbing no one. But his stillness, his presence in this seat, seemed to offend something invisible yet familiar, that hierarchy some people cling to like oxygen. The attendant leaned closer. Sir, don't make this difficult. A camera phone rose 2 seats over. Another one followed. Row 3 had transformed into a stage. At the front of the cabin, a man in designer sunglasses indoors, at night stepped inside. The so-called VIP. Platinum tags jingling, a sense of entitlement strong enough to tilt the plane. He saw Elias in the seat that was supposed to be his. Is there a problem? He demanded. Yes, the attendant said too quickly. We're correcting it now. Elias lifted his gaze again, steady as anchored steel. My boarding pass says 3A. And I'm telling you, she snapped softly, that seat was reassigned. Please move to the back cabin. Murmurs spread through first class like ripples hitting glass. A businessman whispered, just comply, man. It's not that serious. A woman near the bulkhead added, Hez holding everyone up. Elias exhaled one quiet breath. Had seen this scene before. Different uniforms, different rooms, different wording. Same script. Before he could speak, the attendant straightened her blazer, squared her shoulders, and said loudly enough for the cabin to hear, Sir, last warning. Move seats or you will be removed from the aircraft. Gasps. Eyes widened. Phones rose higher. Somewhere between row 1 and row 7, the mood shifted, that subtle click when a crowd decides who the villain must be. Elias reached for the small leather folder in his jacket, the one he kept tucked away unless absolutely necessary. The attendant scoffed. Your ticket won't change anything. But it wasn't a ticket he placed on his lap. It was an ID, heavy, embossed, federal. And in that moment of stillness, the cabin lights hummed, as if they too recognized the weight of what lay in front of him. Before anyone could process it, before the attendant could wipe the surprise from her face, Elias lifted his head, voice low, grounded, deliberate. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Elias. The pilot stepped out of the cockpit, confusion tightening his jaw. Is there an issue in this cabin? All eyes swung to Elias, the man they had underestimated in real time. He closed the ID folder with a soft click, the kind of click that changes trajectory, the kind of click that ends flights. And with the entire first-class section staring at him, waiting for either humiliation or surrender, Elias finally spoke calm, polite, and devastatingly controlled. Captain, before we take off, there are several violations occurring here that you need to be aware of. The VIP scoffed. The attendant paled. A new silence filled the cabin, different from before. Not judgment, not mockery. Something colder, something about to turn the entire flight upside down. The pilot's expression shifted from routine annoyance to something sharper, a pilot's instinct, sensing turbulence before the instruments catch it. "Sir," he said carefully, "what kind of violations are we talking about?" Elias didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply opened the ID wallet again slowly, deliberately letting the gold federal crest catch the cabin light. Rows of passengers leaned forward without meaning to. The attendant swallowed, her confidence draining like air from a punctured tire. "First," Elias said, tone level as a courtroom transcript, "you threatened to remove a passenger from an aircraft without cause. Second, you attempted to reassign a confirmed seat after boarding a violation of FAA passenger rights. Third," he paused, letting the silence stretch, "you attempted to do so for the convenience of an unlisted VIP." The pilot turned toward the attendant. "Is that true?" Her lips trembled. "Captain, I was following priority instructions." "Whose instructions?" he asked. She hesitated. Then her eyes flicked toward the man in sunglasses. That single glance was an indictment. The VIP lifted his chin. "I'm a preferred partner with the airline. Hez in my seat. Fix it. It isn't your seat," Elias replied, "and I'd like to know why you believe it should be." The man scoffed. "Because I paid for it. Because someone the airline actually knows." A ripple of discomfort moved through first class. Elias remained still. "And someone the federal government knows." The pilot stiffened. "Sir, who exactly are you?" Elias didn't answer directly. He slipped out a second card, matte black, government-issued, stamped with a clearance level that made the pilot's face drain of color. A hush fell so deep, even the ventilation hum seemed to fade. "Captain," Elias said quietly, "I'm on official assignment. My seating is not optional, and given what Eve witnessed, I will be filing a full report. But for accuracy, I'll need the name of every flight attendant who interacted with me, the ground supervisor who approved this reassignment, and the identity of that passenger." His eyes flicked briefly to the VIP. The man's bravado wilted instantly. "Hold on," the VIP said, voice cracking. "Let's not escalate. It already escalated," Elias replied. "The moment you demanded someone be displaced for you." The attendant looked down at her hands, breathing unsteady. The pilot straightened. "Sir, I wasn't aware of your assignment. If protocol was violated, that's on my crew. I'll speak with operations immediately." "You'll need to ground the flight," Elias said calmly. "Pending documentation review." Gasps rippled through the cabin. "Ground the what?" the VIP burst out. The pilot didn't argue. He turned to the attendant. "Notify the gate. We're holding position. No one moves until we verify everything." The speaker crackled overhead. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've encountered a procedural issue that requires immediate attention. Please remain seated." Passengers stared at Elias with a dawning realization. Not anger now, not judgment, something else. Respect, and fear of what might follow. The attendant, hands shaking, approached Elias. I didn't mean to offend you, sir. I was told to prioritize." "You were told to profile," Elias said softly. "You just didn't expect the profile to talk back." Her breath caught. The pilot reappeared from the cockpit. "Sir, ground control wants to know the nature of your report." "Tell them," Elias said, "that this aircraft is temporarily grounded due to discriminatory conduct and interference with a federal passenger on assignment." The VIP's jaw dropped. You can't do that." Elias looked at him calm, unhurried, unwavering. "I just did." Phones were no longer filming in secret. They were filming openly now. Boldly. The power dynamic had flipped so violently the cabin could barely process it. The pilot nodded solemnly. "We're returning to the gate." Elias leaned back in his seat, eyes steady on the horizon beyond the window. He wasn't finished. Not by a long shot. The real accountability hadn't even begun. The aircraft rolled toward the gate in a silence so dense it felt like pressure in the cabin walls. Passengers sat frozen, unsure whether to look at Elias, the trembling attendant, or the VIP who now seemed to shrink inside his designer jacket. The seatbelt sign dinged. The engines hummed low, settling like a beast preparing to sleep. A moment later, the cabin door opened with a metallic hiss. Two airport operations managers stepped in, clipboards in hand, reflective vests still glowing from the tarmac lights. Behind them trailed a uniformed security officer, not aggressive, but alert in the way people become when they're told there's a situation. The pilot met them at the doorway, speaking in low, tense tones. Their eyes flicked toward Elias, then toward the VIP, then toward the attendant whose polished composure had dissolved into a pale, trembling shadow of herself. The lead manager, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice built for command centers, stepped forward. "Which passenger is Mr. Monroe?" Elias lifted a hand slightly. "Here." She exhaled not relief, but recognition. "Sir, ground control informed us of your credentials and your report. May I speak with you one-on-one?" "No," Elias replied calmly. "Anything involving misconduct on this aircraft will be documented in full view. Transparency is non-negotiable." The manager nodded. "Understood." Passengers leaned in, phones rose. Somewhere near row 5, someone whispered, "Hez not just a lawyer. Hez something bigger." Elias remained seated, posture straight, voice steady. "Id like the identities of the crew members who attempted to remove me and the justification provided." The manager turned to the attendant. "Miss, is it true you ordered the passenger in 3A to move to the back cabin?" Her voice came out thin. I was instructed by a priority request." "By whom?" She glanced toward the VIP again, a reflex she couldn't hide. The manager followed her eyes. "Sir, did you request this passenger be moved?" The VIP cleared his throat, tugging at his collar. I only pointed out there was a mix-up. They told me 3A was mine." "That is false," Elias said quietly. "And you know it." The VIP hesitated. His confidence, so loud minutes ago, had collapsed into a stuttering mess. "Look, I didn't mean anything by it. Let's all just calm down." Elias didn't raise his voice. He simply opened his briefcase and slid out a legal pad, crisp, white, federal stamped at the top. "I'm calm. Calm enough to record every statement accurately." The VIP paled. "Hold on. Let's not make this official. It is already official," Elias said. "What remains is how deep the report goes." A tremor slid through the cabin, a collective shiver at the realization that the man they underestimated had the authority to write consequences into reality. The manager turned to the attendant. "Is there anything you'd like to amend?" Tears welled in the attendant's eyes. He told me to do it," she said, pointing at the VIP. "He said he was a high-value partner, and I needed to bump anyone who didn't look the part. I swear I didn't want to, I didn't think." The words crumbled into a sob. The cabin gasped. The VIP snapped. "You lying! You're trying to throw me under the bus!" Elias finally stood, not rushed, not dramatic, simply rising with the poise of a man reclaiming ground that never should have been taken from him. He stepped into the aisle, facing the VIP directly. "Do you know what profiling is?" Elias asked softly. The VIP swallowed. "It is the act of assuming someone's place in the world before they even speak," Elias continued. "It is the assumption that I could not sit in 3A because someone like you believes I don't fit." "I didn't mean." "You meant it," Elias said. "And you expected no accountability." Silence. The manager stepped closer. "Mr. Monroe, ground control requests your assessment. Should we escort the VIP off the aircraft?" Elias didn't look away from him. "That depends," he said. "Do you believe you're entitled to stay on this flight?" The VIP's lips trembled. I just wanted my seat." "It was never yours," Elias replied. "But responsibility now is." The VIP's shoulders collapsed. Then he'll get off," he murmured. The manager nodded to the security officer. "Escort him to the terminal." The man who entered like royalty left with the posture of a passenger stripped of privilege, escorted down the aisle under dozens of unblinking, recording eyes. When the door closed again, the manager turned back to Elias. "Sir, is there anything further you require for your report?" "One thing," Elias said. "I want the flight to continue. These passengers have waited long enough." Relief swept through the cabin. Tension cracked. Breaths released. "And the attendant?" the manager asked quietly. Elias glanced at her, shaking, tear-streaked, terrified. "She will remain on duty," he said. Disciplinary decisions belong to your department, not to me. But accountability is most effective when it corrects, not destroys. The attendant's breath hitched. Gratitude and shame blended in equal measure. The manager nodded. Understood. Elias returned to his seat. Calm, grounded, unmoved by the storm, head just reshaped. Passengers whispered, "He saved us. He saved her. He saved the flight," as the engines began to hum again. But Elias wasn't listening. He was already preparing for the next moment, the one where truth would ripple far beyond this cabin. The cabin lights dimmed to their normal pre-departure glow as the aircraft prepared for another pushback. But the atmosphere inside hadn't settled. If anything, it had grown heavier, charged with something electric and unspoken. Because everyone on board understood one thing: this flight would never be the same story it was supposed to be. The pilot made another announcement, steadier this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We are coordinating final clearance before departure. Please remain seated." But all eyes were on Elias. Row after row, people watched him the way crowds watch a man who has just altered the trajectory of an entire environment without ever raising his voice. The attendant, Melissa, her name tag now crooked from trembling fingers, stood near the galley, still shaken, still absorbing the truth of what she had said aloud. She kept glancing at Elias, as if bracing for another verdict that never came. The manager approached again, kneeling beside his seat. "Mr. Monroe," she said softly, "ground control has expedited the clearance. We've documented statements from the crew. The security report is open under your authority. If there is anything further, I'll finish the report en route," he said. "I'll submit the full review to your legal team after landing." She nodded, relief sharpening her posture. "Understood, sir. Thank you." As she stood and exited the cabin, whispers rose like a tide. "Who is he?" "A lawyer," they said. "No, that badge didn't look like a lawyer's badge." "Federal something? Maybe government counsel?" "Whatever he is, that VIP didn't stand a chance." No one knew the exact truth. That Elias Monroe wasn't just a lawyer. He was the man agencies called when a case involved discrimination, power abuse, or federal compliance violations. Head testified before committees, rewritten protocols, and shaped entire airline policies in the past decade. His job wasn't punishment, it was reform, and tonight, whether this crew knew it or not, they had stepped directly into his jurisdiction. The plane began to push back again, engines rumbling with renewed purpose. Melissa approached slowly, hands clasped behind her back. "Sir, may I speak with you?" she whispered. Elias looked up. "Of course." She inhaled shakily. "I want to apologize. Not to protect my job. I know I may lose it. Her voice cracked. "I've never had something like that happen. I thought he was important. I thought I had to do what he said." "You thought he had more power than you," Elias said gently. "So you borrowed his authority to validate your own." Her eyes filled again. "I didn't even realize I was doing it." "Most people don't," he replied. "That's why it's dangerous." A silence grew between them, quiet but transformative. "I don't know how to fix this," she whispered. "You start by recognizing the harm," Elias said. "Then you choose differently next time." She nodded, wiping her eyes quickly before walking back to the galley. Across the cabin, passengers who had earlier mocked him now looked away in shame. A man near the bulkhead cleared his throat loudly, trying to break the tension. "Well, at least we're finally leaving," he said, half joking, half pleading. But a woman beside him, silver hair, business attire, eyes sharper than her soft voice, suggested leaned forward. "You realize he kept this flight from taking off for us," she murmured. "Not against us. That VIP wanted an entire cabin rearranged for his own comfort. If they had removed this man, the flight would have been delayed even longer." A few passengers nodded. Another added quietly, "He also could have had the attendant removed. He didn't." The weight of that sank in. Because Elias hadn't sought retribution. Head sought correction, and that distinction mattered. The plane lifted into the night sky soon after, climbing through layers of cloud until the city lights faded into drifting constellations. Inside, the hum of engines filled the quiet. Elias rested his head back, closing his eyes just for a moment. But then a voice from row 3C broke the hush. "Sir, excuse me." A man in a charcoal suit, a senior corporate executive based on the badge clipped to his briefcase, leaned slightly toward him. "I saw everything," he said. "What you did, that wasn't about ego. That was justice. Real justice." Elias didn't respond immediately. He opened his eyes slowly, studying the man. "People confuse justice with drama," Elias said. "But it doesn't need theatrics. It only needs consistency." "That's rare," the man admitted, "especially at 30,000 feet. Elias turned back to the window, watching the clouds drift beneath the wing. "Justice shouldn't depend on altitude," he murmured. For a moment, neither spoke. And then the man added, almost reverently, "You should know. Word of what happened has already reached the airline hub. Someone's going to ask for your full report the moment we land." Elias didn't flinch. He knew, because this wasn't over. The cabin incident was only the beginning, and when the wheels touched the runway at their destination, the consequences would ripple far wider than the walls of this aircraft. Tonight, an entire airline's hierarchy would discover exactly who they had tried to move from seat 3A, and why that was the most expensive mistake they could have made. The plane cruised through calm air, but tension still clung to the cabin like a second atmosphere. Passengers pretended to relax, opening laptops, half-watching in-flight movies, sipping drinks, but everyone's attention drifted back to row 3A, to the man who had quietly rerouted the entire fate of the evening. Elias didn't bask in the attention. He sat with the poise of someone accustomed to storms others didn't see coming. An hour into the flight, the seatbelt sign chimed off. The aisle filled with the soft shuffle of passengers stretching their legs. Melissa, the attendant, approached again, calmer now, though her hands still fidgeted with the edge of her apron. "Mr. Monroe," she said gently, "there's someone in the galley asking to speak with you. They said it's about your report." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Mid-flight?" She nodded. "It's the purser. He just received transmission from the airline's compliance division." That was fast. Too fast for this to be a standard follow-up. Elias stepped into the galley, the curtain swaying behind him. The purser, a tall man with salt-streaked hair and a uniform pressed to military precision, waited with a tablet in hand. "Sir," he began respectfully, "I need to brief you on something quietly." Melissa retreated, giving space. The purser lowered his voice. "The corporate hub reran the passenger manifest. The VIP you had removed wasn't supposed to be on this flight at all." Elias blinked. "Meaning?" "Meaning," the purser said carefully, "he was standby. Unauthorized upgrade. He pressured a gate agent into marking him as priority boarding. And that gate agent is currently being questioned by the airline's internal audit team." Elias exhaled slowly. So the rot went deeper. The purser continued. "He also had a history of filing fraudulent VIP treatment requests. This wasn't his first incident. The pieces aligned with quiet inevitability. Elias had seen this pattern before, people cloaking their entitlement in procedural loopholes, weaponizing ambiguity. "Compliance is requesting," the purser added, "that you document your statement with as much detail as possible. They've flagged this as a Level 4 passenger misconduct case. That was no small classification. Level 4 meant the airline acknowledged potential discrimination, abuse of authority, and safety interference. It was one step below federal escalation. "I'll finalize my report before landing," Elias said. The purser nodded, relieved. "Thank you, sir. We appreciate your professionalism." As Elias returned to his seat, the cabin watched him with a different expression now, not curiosity, not fear, but gratitude. Quiet, reverent gratitude. The woman in row 2, the silver-haired executive, spoke as he passed. "You didn't just stand up for yourself," she said softly. "You corrected a culture that's been failing for years." Elias replied with a faint nod. "Cultures don't change because of reports. They change because of accountability." Back in 3A, he opened his laptop. The screen glowed against the dim cabin lighting, illuminating the outline of a man who had spent years shaping policy that people rarely noticed but always depended on. His fingers moved with practiced rhythm across the keys, documenting exact wording of the attendant's demand. behavior of the VIP, the profiling, the misuse of passenger priority rules, the public safety implications, the crew's reactions, the timeline of events. In the aisle, a young mother struggled to settle her toddler. The child fussed, overwhelmed by the lingering tension. Elias paused his typing, turned slightly, and offered a soft smile. "Would you like my seat?" he asked gently. The mother blinked. "Oh, no, I couldn't. It reclines farther," Elias said. "He might rest easier." Her eyes softened. "Thank you, but we'll be okay." She hesitated, then added quietly, "Thank you for what you did earlier." People saw it. "My son won't remember tonight, but I will." The boy peeked at Elias shyly, then hid his face. Elias offered a warm nod before returning to his report. He had barely resumed typing when another ping echoed through the cabin, this time from the cockpit speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pilot announced, "we've received communication requesting Mr. Elias Monroe to meet with airport security and airline executives upon landing. This is a standard procedure when formal reports are filed." The cabin stirred, whispers rising again. Airport security, airline executives. This was no longer a simple incident. The man in 3C leaned over. "They're assembling a team for you. That's not normal, is it?" "It means," Elias said, closing his laptop with quiet finality, "that someone important wants to know how deep this goes." Just then, Melissa approached once more, still humbled, still shaken, but now carrying something different in her eyes. Responsibility. "Sir," she whispered, "I just received a message from the airline's chief compliance officer." She swallowed. "They're asking if you intend to pursue federal action." Elias held her gaze. "Not yet," he said. "But the airline's response tonight will determine everything." A hush rippled through the surrounding rows. Because in that moment, everyone understood. This wasn't just about a seat, or a VIP, or a delay. It was about a system being tested by the one man capable of redefining its rules. And when the wheels touched the runway, the next chapter wouldn't happen in the air. It would happen on the ground under brighter lights, with bigger consequences. The wheels touched down with a long, steady rumble, the kind that signaled not just arrival, but inevitability. Engines reversed, the cabin tilted forward, and the runway lights streaked past like white-hot lines of consequence. For the first time since the incident began, Elias felt the aircraft slow into something like equilibrium. But the calm outside the window didn't match the tension radiating through first class. Everyone knew something was waiting for them beyond the jet bridge. Something larger than a delayed takeoff. Something deeper than an entitled passenger. The intercom chimed. "Ladies and gentlemen," the pilot said, "we will be arriving at Gate 42. Please remain seated until the seatbelt sign is off. Per request from airport and airline officials, certain passengers will be deplaned first." A murmur spread instantly. Certain passengers. Not a passenger. Passengers. Plural. Melissa stiffened near the galley door. She knew exactly who those certain people were. Her face paled again. When the aircraft rolled to a final stop, the cabin lights rose from dim amber to full, sterile white. There was no hiding under that kind of illumination. Everyone looked painfully visible, especially the ones waiting for accountability to hit. The seatbelt sign dinged off, but no one stood. Outside the window, Elias could see silhouettes gathering at the gate. Airport security in Navy uniforms, 2 operations managers, a woman in a charcoal suit holding a folder thick enough to signal legal involvement, and a man with a gold airline pin, the kind worn by executives who rarely stepped into terminal wings. Elias closed his laptop slowly. He felt more eyes on him than on the runway. The pilot appeared at the front of the cabin, clearing his throat. "Mr. Monroe," he said quietly, "you are requested to disembark first. You'll be escorted to the conference room adjacent to the gate." Elias stood, that same unhurried grace anchoring every movement. "I'll comply." He collected his briefcase and stepped into the aisle. People instinctively pulled back, giving him a path as if he were not just a passenger, but a verdict in motion. As he reached the front, Melissa called out softly. "Sir?" He paused. She swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Thank you for what you said, about correction instead of destruction. I'll remember that." He held her gaze for a moment, then learned from it. That's all accountability ever asks. Her shoulders eased, not absolved, but steadier. Elias stepped into the jet bridge. The air shifted instantly cooler, denser, heavy with protocol. Security stood at attention. The woman in the charcoal suit approached first. "Mr. Monroe," she greeted, extending a hand with controlled deference. "I'm Dana Vidal, Chief Compliance Officer for Meridian Airlines. We were informed of the incident, and I want to personally thank you for handling it with professionalism." Her tone was careful, someone used to speaking in crisis rooms. Behind her, the executive in the gold pin stepped forward. "Sir, I'm Richard Halpern, Senior VP of Passenger Operations. Please know that what happened on board is unacceptable and does not reflect the standards of our airline." Elias offered a polite nod. "I'll allow the report to reflect what occurred." Dana gestured toward the open conference room door. "We have a brief debriefing prepared. 3 personnel will join us. Your statement will help determine further actions." Inside the room, 2 chairs faced each other across a table. A third chair sat off to the side, reserved for an observer or an attorney. Elias sat with the calm of someone who'd done this many times in many rooms with similar walls. Dana opened her folder. "Sir, before we begin, your credentials indicate you're not only federal counsel, but current lead auditor for the Department of Transportation's Anti-Discrimination Task Force. Is that correct?" "It is." A quiet, collective exhale moved through the room. Richard Halpern's jaw tightened. He understood instantly the scale of the problem. Dana continued. "We've already suspended the gate agent and grounded the crew member pending review. We requested your insight because this case may inform future policy revisions. Your documentation could influence federal oversight." Elias folded his hands. "Then let's ensure accuracy." Dana nodded, flipping to page 1. "First question. In your assessment, was the crew's conduct influenced more by the VIP's pressure or by implicit bias?" Elias didn't hesitate. "Both," he said. "One created the demand. The other created the compliance." Dana wrote quickly. Richard leaned forward. "Sir, if I may, how likely is it that this case triggers federal involvement?" Elias looked at him evenly. "Your airline's response determines that." Richard swallowed. Dana asked, "Do you intend to pursue external action?" "For now," Elias said, "I intend to pursue the truth. What follows depends on how you handle it." The room froze on that line. Because everyone understood, he wasn't threatening them. He was telling them the rules of the universe they'd stepped into. Dana exhaled slowly. "Understood, Mr. Monroe. Well, proceed." She clicked her pen. "Let's begin with the moment the flight attendant approached you." The door shut, the conference room sealed. Outside, passengers trickled off the jet bridge in hushed clusters, whispering, "That was the man in 3A. The one who stopped the flight." No, he didn't stop it. He corrected it. Inside, as Elias began recounting the truth from the first words spoken at 36,000 feet, the airline began its reckoning. And the night shifted again, quietly, precisely, the way real justice always begins. Dana's pen scratched steadily across the page, each stroke carving the incident deeper into the airline's internal history. Elias sat across from her, posture dignified, voice calm, never rushing, never embellishing. He delivered the truth the way surgeons deliver incisions, precise, measured, necessary. "Mr. Monroe," Dana said, flipping to a fresh page, "we need to capture the sequence exactly as it occurred. When the attendant said, 'Passengers like you,' would you say the tone was dismissive, hostile, or discriminatory?" Elias' gaze didn't waver. It reflected bias, the kind that hides behind professional politeness. Richard Halpern shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The phrases were landing with surgical weight. Beside him sat a legal advisor wearing a navy suit and a cautious expression, the kind of person who measures every problem in dollars, headlines, and potential fallout. "What happened today," Elias continued, "wasn't an isolated misjudgment. It was the predictable result of a system that teaches staff to assume status by appearance." Dana underlined that sentence twice. "Mr. Monroe," she said, "before we proceed, you should know something. This isn't the first complaint about that VIP, or about that gate agent, or even about implicit bias on this route." Elias leaned back slightly, unreadable. "So you're dealing with a pattern?" Dana nodded, shame flickering behind her professionalism. A pattern we've been trying to address, but not with someone of your authority documenting it. The legal advisor cleared his throat. Sir, if we may, what is your expected course of action once this statement is submitted to the Department of Transportation? Elias looked at him calm, controlled, disarmingly composed. That depends on your willingness to take responsibility before someone forces you to. Richard's breath hitched not fear, but recognition. He understood that line. He had spoken versions of it to his own staff in crisis meetings. Hearing it directed at himself felt like a mirror he didn't want to look into. Dana continued, more gently. We don't want this to become adversarial. We want your partnership. We want to repair this. Repairing starts with truth, Elias said, not defensiveness. Outside the glass wall of the conference room, passengers drifted past in hushed clusters, casting discreet glances at the closed door. A few recognized Elias through the window. One mouthed, "Thank you." Another pressed a hand to her chest as she walked by. But inside the room, the air shifted when Dana placed a new form on the table. Mr. Monroe, this next section is optional, she said carefully. It allows you to recommend corrective measures for our internal training program. Elias took his time reading the header, Airline Bias Intervention and Staff Accountability Review. He exhaled once, then said, "I'll fill this out." Richard's eyebrows rose. "You're willing to advise on corrective action?" "I don't file reports to punish people," Elias replied. "I file them to prevent repetition." Dana's expression softened into something close to respect. "Then your input could reshape our entire training model." Elias picked up the pen. But before he could begin writing, the conference room door swung open. A younger operations manager entered, tablet shaking slightly in his hand. "Miss Vidal." "Sir, you need to see this." Richard frowned. "What now?" The manager turned the screen toward them. A video, rows of seats, the confrontation, the attendant's demand. Elias' quiet response. The moment he revealed the badge, the pilot stepping out. The hush falling over first class. Someone had posted it. Already. "Where was this uploaded?" Dana asked sharply. "Everywhere," he whispered. "Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's already at 2 million views combined." The temperature in the room changed instantly. Richard's skin went pale. The airline's legal advisor muttered something under his breath. Dana covered her mouth with her hand, realizing what this meant. Their timeline had just collapsed. They had hoped for 24 hours to control the narrative. They now had 24 minutes. "Mr. Monroe," the advisor asked, voice cracking at the edges, "did you post this?" "No," Elias said, "but truth rarely stays private in rooms full of witnesses." The manager swallowed. "There's more." He tapped again. A hashtag illuminated the screen. Number seat 3A. Then another, number passengers like you, and the one that seemed to sting the most, number bias on board. Within minutes, hundreds of comments appeared on the scrolling feed. This man handled discrimination with more grace than that airline deserves. Shut down an entire flight and stayed calm? That's real power. If he files a federal report, this airline is done. Protect the black lawyer in 3A at all costs. Dana looked at Elias. "Sir, what do you want us to do?" "The world is watching." Elias gently set the pen down. "What any ethical organization would do," he said. "Acknowledge the truth before it buries you." Richard braced his hands on the table. "We can issue a statement. Immediately." Elias nodded once. "Then I'll review it. And I'll decide if it reflects sincerity or survival instinct." A heavy silence settled. The airline executives realized something profound. This man in 3A would not weaponize his power. He didn't need to. The truth and the world were already doing it for him. Dana took a breath. "Mr. Monroe, we want to get this right. Tell us what the next step is." Elias folded his hands. "Next," he said. "You bring in the attendant." Richard blinked. "Now?" "Now," Elias repeated. Because justice, in his world, didn't wait for perfect conditions. It waited for courage. And tonight, courage was about to walk through the conference room door on trembling feet, carrying the weight of a choice she could no longer run from. The conference room felt smaller now, its walls holding tension like a sealed container. Dana signaled to the operations manager, who nodded and stepped out. The door clicked shut, leaving Elias and the executives suspended in a quiet, expectant air. Moments later, soft footsteps echoed down the jet bridge ramp. Melissa. She entered with her shoulders drawn tight, hands clasped together, eyes already brimming with apologies she hadn't found words for. Her uniform looked suddenly too big for her, as though she had shrunk inside it during the flight. She halted 3 steps inside the room, unsure where to stand. Dana gestured gently. "You can sit?" Melissa shook her head. "I'd rather stand. I don't want to take up space I haven't earned." Elias watched her, not judging, not shielding, simply observing a man accustomed to distinguishing remorse from performance. And what he saw now was real. A woman trying not to crumble under the weight of her own reflection. Richard leaned forward. "Melissa, But Elias lifted a hand lightly. "Let her speak first." The room fell still. Melissa inhaled shakily. "I know why I'm here, and I know what I did. I profiled a passenger. I enforced something I knew was wrong because I thought it was safer to obey someone who acted powerful." Her voice wavered. "That VIP, he spoke like someone who was used to getting his way, and I let that influence me. I didn't stop to think about fairness. I didn't stop to think about dignity. I just reacted." Tears gathered again, but she kept going. "When I approached you, sir, I didn't see a lawyer. I didn't see a federal official. I saw a man who I assumed had less authority than the person demanding your seat. And that assumption was rooted in bias. My bias." The room absorbed the words. Even Dana, trained to maintain neutrality, exhaled with a subtle tremor. Melissa blinked through tears. "I humiliated you, and I endangered my crew by escalating something that never should have begun. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even expect to keep my job. I just want the chance to say I was wrong." Silence settled like dust. Elias leaned back, his gaze steady, almost meditative, a man sifting through layers of truth, searching for the motive beneath the mistake. "What made you believe he deserved the seat more than I did?" Elias asked gently. Melissa wiped her cheek. Because he said he was important, and because she hesitated because he looked like people who usually are." A quiet shiver ran through the room. She didn't try to soften it. "I didn't see his entitlement as a red flag. I saw it as direction. And I saw your calm, as permission to override you. But none of that excuses anything." Elias paused, letting the weight of her answer settle. "When did you realize you were wrong?" he asked. "When you didn't raise your voice," she whispered. "When you didn't argue. When you didn't try to defend yourself. And I realized I was talking to someone who had nothing to prove because real authority doesn't rush." Elias nodded once. A small acknowledgement. Not approval, not absolution. A recognition that she understood the magnitude of what she had done. Dana interjected softly. "Melissa, corporate is prepared to place you on administrative leave." Pending Elias turned his head slightly. "Before decisions are made, let her hear the consequence directly." Melissa stiffened. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't lean forward. His tone was calm, steady, almost painfully measured. "The consequence," he said, "is that you will remember this moment long after reports are filed and headlines fade." Melissa swallowed. "You will carry the knowledge that a single assumption nearly cost a man his dignity, cost a flight its safety, and cost yourself your integrity." Her lip trembled. "But consequences," Elias continued, "should guide the next action, not erase the person." Richard blinked, surprised. Dana folded her arms slowly, listening. Elias rose from his seat. "Look at me," he said. "Melissa did. You made a choice rooted in bias. And now you are making a choice rooted in accountability. The first harms. The second heals. Only one of them deserves to define you." Melissa's eyes filled again, this time not from shame, but from something like release. Elias stepped back. "My recommendation," he said, turning to Dana and Richard, "is not termination." Melissa gasped softly. Dana's eyebrows lifted. "Not?" "No," Elias continued. "Bias cannot be undone by punishment, only by transformation." He looked at Melissa again. "You will undergo intensive retraining. Real training, not corporate script reading. Sessions on implicit bias, crisis response, equitable passenger treatment. You will shadow a senior attendant known for ethical conduct, and you will report back to this department personally. Melissa nodded rapidly, tears spilling now. Yes, yes, I will. I promise. And, Elias added gently, you will write a statement not for me, not for legal, but for yourself. Document what you learned tonight. Put it in your own words. That will matter more than any report I file. She nodded again, crying openly. Dana glanced at him with something close to awe. Mr. Monroe, this is beyond fair. It isn't fairness, Elias said. It's accountability with purpose. Then the door opened again. The operations manager re-entered, breathless. Dana, sir, the CEO is calling. He wants to join this meeting now. Richard's jaw tightened. Of course he does. The video's everywhere. The manager shook his head. It's beyond that. The Department of Transportation just issued a formal request for immediate briefing. Dana nearly dropped her folder. The room's oxygen shifted again. Elias remained still, grounded, unmoved by the escalation. He had expected this, because justice rarely ends in the room where it begins, and the next door that would open would reshape far more than one airline. The conference room vibrated with a low, urgent tension as the operations manager held out the tablet, its screen still glowing with the incoming call. Dana steadied herself before tapping accept. The face of Meridian Airlines CEO filled the screen. Gray temples, deliberate posture, the expression of a man accustomed to controlling every room he entered. But tonight, control did not belong to him. Mr. Monroe, he began, forcing composure into his voice. I've been fully briefed on the situation. I want to express my deepest apologies for what happened aboard our aircraft. This incident is unacceptable, and Elias lifted a hand. I didn't ask for apologies. The CEO blinked, his rehearsed empathy faltering. I understand. Then let's discuss how we can correct. Correction, Elias said, starts with truth, not messaging. Dana suppressed a breath. Richard looked at Elias like he was watching someone walk across a high wire without fear of falling. Elias continued, his voice measured, unwavering. You have a culture problem. Not a PR problem, not a personnel issue, a systemic one. The CEO swallowed. I am aware that our training wouldn't have changed the bias, Elias said. Training changes behavior. Accountability changes character. Silence cracked across the room like thin ice. The CEO leaned forward, lowering his voice. Mr. Monroe, may I ask how far do you intend to take this? Elias didn't answer immediately. He let the question sit, let the weight of it settle into the CEO's shoulders. Then he said, how far depends on your next decision. The CEO shifted. Then tell me what the next step should be. Elias folded his hands calmly on the table. First, acknowledgement. Public, transparent, specific. Not a half-hearted statement about miscommunication. Name the problem, name the behavior, name the harm. The CEO exhaled shakily. Understood. Second, protection, Elias added. Your staff cannot fear retaliation for reporting bias. That gate agent didn't act alone. Someone created the conditions that made the wrong decision seem normal. Dana nodded emphatically. This was already beyond anything their board had discussed. Third, transformation. The CEO hesitated. What form of transformation? The kind that rebuilds culture, Elias replied. Not with slogans, with structure. He tapped the table once, precise. Mandatory bias intervention for all customer-facing staff. Revised chain of command for passenger disputes. Transparent auditing for seat reassignment protocols. And a new council for oversight, composed of internal leaders and external specialists. Dana's eyebrows rose. External? Elias looked at her. Yes, she understood instantly what he meant. This wasn't a patch, it was a rebuild. The CEO cleared his throat. Mr. Monroe, are you suggesting you join this oversight council? I'm suggesting you let someone who understands accountability shape it, Elias said. If that's me, so be it. If not, choose someone with authority and integrity. The CEO nodded slowly. I'm open to that. Elias didn't smile. Being open is not commitment. Dana suppressed another breath. Richard rubbed his forehead, realizing how seismic the coming shift would be. Before the CEO could respond, Melissa spoke. Her voice was small, but the room leaned into it. "Sir, Mr. Monroe saved me from losing my job." The CEO's eyebrows shot up. "Saved you?" Melissa nodded, wiping another tear. "He showed me my mistake without destroying my future. If our airline had taught accountability like that, I wouldn't be standing here ashamed." Even the CEO fell silent, because what she said wasn't dramatic. It was devastatingly simple. And true. Elias turned slightly toward her. "Integrity isn't about having no bias," he said. "It's about what you do the moment you see it." Melissa nodded, trembling with relief and remorse intertwined. The CEO finally spoke again. "Mr. Monroe, what would you need from us to consider this resolved without federal escalation?" Elias' gaze was steady. "What I need," he said, "is sincerity and follow-through." "And what does that look like?" the CEO asked. Elias leaned forward, voice low but powerful enough to reshape the air. "Your airline will release a statement acknowledging the incident. You will commit to the corrective structure I outlined, and you will meet with me within 30 days to review your progress." "And if we do?" the CEO asked. "Then I submit the report as resolved internally," Elias replied, "and I close the case without recommending federal intervention." A hush enveloped the entire room. It wasn't a compromise. It wasn't a threat. It was a standard, one the airline had never been held to before. The CEO nodded slowly, reverently. "Then that is what we will do." Dana exhaled like shed bin underwater. Richard sat back in his chair, stunned. The legal advisor scribbled notes furiously, knowing this meeting would become the blueprint for every compliance action moving forward. Elias rose. The CEO hesitated. "Mr. Monroe, one more thing." Elias waited. "You had every reason to humiliate this company today. You had the platform, the audience, the leverage, but you chose reform." Elias replied quietly, "Justice isn't revenge. It's realignment." The line struck the room like a gavel. The CEO nodded, and for the first time, his expression was not defensive, or formal, or strategic. It was respectful. "Thank you," he said. Elias closed his briefcase. As he exited the conference room, passengers in the waiting area looked up, one by one. Some whispered. Some straightened their posture. Some simply watched in awe. Melissa stood near the doorway, hands clasped. When Elias passed, she whispered, "You changed more than my night." He paused. "No," he said. "You changed it by choosing responsibility." Her eyes shined. Elias stepped out into the terminal, quiet, composed, grounded, not triumphant, just steady. Because justice, true justice, didn't need applause. It needed follow-through, courage, clarity. And as the sliding doors opened to the night outside, Elias Monroe walked forward, not as the man who grounded a flight, but as the man who set a standard loud enough to echo far beyond Gate 42.